You've seen it, right? Those Instagram feeds just absolutely overflowing with private jets, supercars, and these impossibly perfect lives. It's the billionaire fantasy, and honestly, it's designed to be completely irresistible. But today, we're going to pull back that curtain and get real about what it actually takes to build wealth.
I mean, this is the exact image they sell us. Sun-drenched streets in Dubai, the roar of a V12 engine, the absolute freedom to order a $500 steak without even blinking. This is the promised land of hustle culture.
And it goes even deeper than that. Think about it. Private jet terminals where you never see another soul, meals that look more like art than food, a concierge for your every single whim. It's a world that's basically engineered to feel like a completely different reality. And hey, let's be honest, it's incredibly alluring.
But here's the question that just cuts through all of that noise. When you strip away all the social media filters and the perfectly curated content, how many people on this entire planet are actually living this life? That's the number. Out of nearly 8 billion people on Earth, just a little over 3,000 are billionaires. You know, as Shark Tank's Robert Herjavec points out, the media makes it seem so common that we've kind of lost all perspective. Suddenly, that Lamborghini in Dubai, it doesn't just feel far away, it feels like it's in a whole other galaxy. So this massive gap between what we see and what's real has led to some pretty strong opinions. The comedian Curtis Connor, for example, decided to test out one of the most popular billionaire myths, the crazy disciplined morning routine. His conclusion? It's all just propaganda. He basically argues you don't become a billionaire through hard work alone. At some point, he claims exploitation has to come into play. And just look at how absurd this routine he followed is. It's a full-time job before your actual job even begins. We're talking alpha breathing, recalling dreams about eating worms, and journaling your to-feel list. After a whole week of this, he said it was mostly pointless, super time-consuming, and the brain smoothie was, and I'm quoting him here, like trying to drink a burger. Okay, so what does a real billionaire's week look like? Well, here's a little peek into Robert Herjavec's schedule. Notice what's missing? Yeah, brain smoothies and alpha breathing. Instead, it's this relentless gauntlet of board meetings, international flights, investment updates, and content creation. This isn't about wellness, it's about work. And this really gets to the core of the whole myth versus reality thing. The fantasy is all about these perfectly optimized wellness rituals that are designed to make you feel productive. The reality? It's about an intense, demanding schedule driven by just immense responsibility. So this brings us to the real question. If the popular image of wealth is a total fantasy and the reality is a brutal grind, why are so many of us still obsessed with the fantasy? Why are we chasing the look of success instead of, actual success itself? Mark Tilbury has a name for this. He calls it the money trap. It's that whole cycle of leasing cars you can't really afford and buying designer clothes on credit, all just to impress people on social media. You're mistaking the symbols of wealth for the substance of it, and it is a surefire way to stay broke. So he lays out two paths, and most of us will face this exact choice. Path A is the safe route. You get a well-paid but maybe unfulfilling job. You make good money early on, and from the outside, it looks like you're winning. But path B? That's different. You take a lower-paying job that forces you to develop really valuable skills, maybe even gain some ownership or equity, a little piece of the company. It's a real struggle at first. But just look at the long-term result. Path A, that money-first approach, it eventually plateaus. Your income just hits a ceiling. Path B, the skills-first approach, well, that leads to exponential growth. According to Tilbury, every single self-made millionaire he knows took Path B. This is such a crucial insight. Money can be a blinder. When you're only focused on that next paycheck, you totally miss the opportunities to build skills, to learn, to gain ownership, all the things that create true, lasting wealth. Instead of just earning an asset, you become one. So if Path B is the way to go, how do you navigate it? Tilbury introduces this really powerful concept called the performance gap. It's simply the distance between your current reality and your ultimate goal. And the secret, he says, is to become absolutely obsessed with closing that gap. And you don't close it by leasing a Lamborghini. You close it by providing value. This is the fundamental equation that so many people get completely backward. Your income isn't determined by what you buy, it's determined by the value you can provide to other people. So how do you figure out where you can provide the most value?
He suggests this super simple exercise. Draw 3 circles, one for what you enjoy, one for what you're good at, and one for what the market will pay really well for. That intersection, that sweet spot right in the middle, is what he calls your value zone. That's your target.
This is really the core idea. The bigger the problem you can solve for somebody else, the more you are going to earn. Closing your performance gap is all about becoming a world-class problem solver within your specific value zone. Of course, this path isn't easy. You're going to face obstacles. Mark Tilbury himself started with 0 qualifications and a manager who bullied him. The key is how you frame these challenges. See, an obstacle is something you overcome. An excuse is when you let that very same obstacle become a permanent wall between you and your dreams. And this is precisely why that whole billionaire fantasy is so damaging. It sells you the king lifestyle without showing you any of the work it takes to build the kingdom. The reality of creating anything significant, whether it's a business or a skill set, requires focus and delaying that gratification. You have to build the kingdom first.
This really gets to the heart of the trade-off. It's not about an endless grind, but it is about understanding that in the early stages, something's got to give. You have to consciously choose where to put your time, your money, and your energy, and put it towards closing that performance gap. If you don't, your biggest goals will always stay just that, dreams. So let's redefine what winning actually looks like. The goal isn't the flashy car or the luxury vacation. I mean, those are just byproducts. The real prize is freedom. The freedom that comes from owning in-demand skills, from owning a piece of a business, and ultimately from owning your own time. And that leaves us with one final, very personal question. Look at your own life, at the gap between where you are right now and where you really want to be. Which of your excuses need to be downgraded to just mere obstacles? And what are you truly willing to sacrifice to close that gap? Because the answer to that question is where the real work and the real reward begins.
You know, if you've spent any time online, you've definitely seen it. That whole hustle culture promise of a billionaire morning routine that's going to change your entire life. But what if, and just hear me out, what if the secret to building real wealth has absolutely nothing to do with waking up at 4 a.m. to drink some kale smoothie? Okay, let's really dive into this and separate the hype from what actually works.
So this is a quote from the guy who actually promotes this $1 billion morning routine. And, you know, at first glance, that sounds pretty profound. But it's immediately followed by this massive list of things to do that would probably exhaust a superhero. So yeah, let's investigate this. All right, we're going to start by deconstructing this really popular myth. Does winning the morning really mean winning at life? Or is it just a clever, kind of complicated way to sell you on a set of habits that are, frankly, a little bit ridiculous?
And here it is, the whole shebang. The full 15-step routine that comedian Curtis Connor actually put himself through for a week. I mean, look at this. We've got recalling your dreams, a to-feel list, and of course, the legendary brain smoothie. And you're supposed to do all of this before you've even started your actual workday. It's basically a full-time job before your real full-time job.
Okay, let's just zoom in on one of these for a second. Step 4, alpha breathing. Apparently this involves smiling, putting your tongue on the roof of your mouth, breathing in for 4 seconds, holding for 8, and then breathing out really slowly. It's very specific.
And this right here just perfectly sums it up. After trying it, Curtis Connor's financial advice for this particular habit was simple: sell. You know, I think most of us who breathe all day long for free would probably have to agree with him on that one.
Ah yes, the famous brain smoothie. So, what's in this magical elixir? Blueberries, avocado, leafy greens, and water. That sounds thick, and probably not in a good way.
Curtis's review really just paints a picture, doesn't it? He said it was like trying to drink a burger. I mean, think about it. Billionaires have all the money in the world for the best food, and this is what they're choosing to drink? I'm just not convinced.
Okay, so we've had a little fun poking holes in the morning routine, but this brings up a really serious question. If cold showers and burger smoothies aren't the answer, then what is? Let's actually explore a real, practical framework for building wealth.
Now this is where things get really practical. We're going to look at a framework from entrepreneur Mark Tilbury. It's time to forget the morning routine madness, because the real starting point is something he calls the value zone.
So this brings us to what's known as the performance gap. That's just the space between where you are right now and where you really want to be. And Tilbury's whole idea is that closing this gap isn't about rituals, it's all about value. The more value you provide, the bigger the problems you solve for people, the more money you're going to make, It's really that simple.
So how do you find that value? Well, Tilbury suggests this super simple but really powerful exercise. You just make 3 lists. First, what do you love doing? Second, what are you actually good at? And third, what will people pay for? That little intersection, that sweet spot right in the middle where all 3 circles overlap, that's your value zone. That's where all your energy should go. Okay, so once you figure out your value zone, you need a way to turn it into actual income, right? Tilbury calls this your vehicle. It's basically the tool you're going to use to drive toward your financial goals.
He uses this fantastic analogy that makes it so clear. Your active vehicle is like a motorbike. It's what you're actively riding to make money, like a service business. Then your passive vehicle is like the sidecar. It's where you put that money you've made to let it grow over time. You're going to need both, but you have to start with the motor first.
And his advice for picking that first active vehicle, it's crystal clear. Start with a service-based business. It costs almost nothing to set up and lets you monetize your skills directly. It's just the most efficient way to start providing that value and closing that performance gap we were talking about.
So, if billionaires aren't spending 3 hours every morning on some crazy routine, what are they actually doing? Let's look at a real-world example to see how the myth compares to the reality.
This is a pretty typical week for Robert Herjavec from Shark Tank. See a theme here? It is packed with high-level, high-impact work, board meetings, international speaking gigs, managing massive investments. It's all about execution and strategy, not journaling about what you want to be for the day. But living that kind of life comes with its own set of challenges. The YouTube channel Lux Vibe did this experiment where they lived like a billionaire for a week, and this quote really captures the unexpected downside. The sheer amount of excess actually created a disconnect from what felt normal, what felt real.
And that experiment really highlights these hidden costs. It brought up feelings of isolation on private jets, this immense pressure to constantly keep up appearances, and just total emotional exhaustion from always being on. It's not exactly the carefree dream that we're often sold.
And that really leaves us with one final, and I think very important question. Is the real goal here to chase that billionaire lifestyle with all of its hidden costs? Or should the focus be on using these solid principles to build a rich, fulfilling life that you genuinely love? A life that you don't feel the need to escape from in the first place? Now that might be the most valuable goal of all.
We all dream of getting rich, right? But what happens when you actually get there? Let's find out.
That question wasn't asked by someone with nothing. It came from someone who had everything.
Okay, so Section 1, the Billionaire Blueprint. It all starts with one simple goal: closing that gap to wealth.
And that takes a ton of sacrifice. We're talking time, money, energy, everything goes on the back burner.
So, that's the price of admission. The carrot on the stick, ultimate freedom and success. All right, Section 2, a taste of the high life. So what's that life really like? Let's peek behind the curtain. Imagine this. For 7 days, you're living like a billionaire. Private jets, the works. It started out amazing. But you know what the real perk was? Ultimate convenience. No waiting, no crowds, just total control. But that convenience had a dark side. It created a bubble and total, crushing isolation. Section 3, the isolation of excess. That initial high? Yeah, it wore off fast. Things got heavy. It became emotionally exhausting. You're constantly performing, totally cut off from just simple joys, As Curtis Connor puts it, this lifestyle can make people kind of weird. They're just so removed from reality. Think about it. Even just eating a meal became a performance. It wasn't about hunger anymore. Now for Section 4, the mirror of truth. So how do you escape this golden cage? It all comes down to a choice.
Path number 1 is the blame game. It's way easier to just point the finger at someone else, right?
Mark Tilbury puts it perfectly. You can use a magnifying glass to blame others, or a mirror to look at yourself.
There's a great proverb about this. The person who stops blaming others, they've already arrived.
And that brings us to Section 5, redefining rich. This whole shift changes the entire game.
After that whole experiment, you know what was missing? Real fulfillment. Not the jets, not the clothes. What really matters are the things money can't buy. Relationships, peace of mind, just connection. So, true happiness? Turns out it comes from within. It's not about all the external stuff.
So I'll leave you with this question. When you look in the mirror, what does true wealth look like to you?